Welcome everyone. It's Chain Reactions. Give us 2 seconds while we share this with the world. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, cool. Boost this online.
Yes.
Here. 2 seconds, folks. Just gotta retweet that. Save that. All right. Share it out. We're about to go live. Okay. Now, where else would be? All right. Let's get into it, shall we? Yeah, I'm good to go.
Let's
We're
get
good
it.
to go. All right. So, okay. So let's kick things off. So welcome everyone. This is Chain Reactions. This is our weekly live stream and podcast where we talk to founders, leaders, marketing heads in this wonderful world of Web3. And today we have a very special guest. We have Romulo, or Rom, as we call him, who helps lead our design team here at Myosin. And really excited to have this fun conversation. Rom is doing fantastic work for us and has been very much an OG member, I would say, in the existence of the DAO. And I think this is going to be a very fun conversation around design, brands, Rom's story and journey into Web3, and just the general state of the industry and what needs work. But with that, welcome, Rom. We'd love to have you kind of introduce yourself, tell the world a bit about yourself, and let's get into things, shall we?
Yes. Thank you for having me here. Very excited to be here today with both of you.
Rom, would love to have you introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about, who are you? Where'd you come from? What's the journey looking like? Let's start there.
How did you end up in Web3?
Yeah.
Losing a lot of money.
Just
Good
like the rest of us.
Yeah. So how did I lose a lot of money with Web3? I think it's a good question to ask. But my background is I've been a designer my entire life. I started doing design when I was still at high school. So like I was lucky enough to study high school in a design school. So I was almost like part-time designer, part-time studying to go to university. And then when I got to university, I already have sort of I was already a designer. So I was kind of ahead of everyone in my class. That was a bit of my experience. And then, so that means I always had that sort of like eager to support people around me and to kind of like pass by, because it's not that I was better than people. It's just I was earlier than everyone, like, so then by being earlier than everyone, that really helped me to propel my career really fast. So when I left university, I already have like big projects, like one of them would be the rebrand of my city, Sao Paulo. So I basically did the whole project with the tourism office. It was my high school project, and then they end up publishing it, and that became the logo for the city. And like, and after that, won many awards with this project. So basically, like when I was like 23, 24, I luckily enough, I was already sort of like in the scene. And then I was working for Future Brand, bigger branding agency in Sao Paulo as an intern. There was a role in Singapore. I was sent to Singapore, and then I spent 9 years there. So it was I live all this way from like basically not digital at all, like living doing packaging design. That's my background when I started my career, doing things for Nestle, Unilever's, learning how to be customer centric, learning how to sell things to people, right? Like when you do chocolates, when you do packaging, it's all about that 2 seconds of attention that you have in the supermarket. And this is still the same today, right? Like when you create a post on social media, it's still the same strategy, is still the same old design that I learned like 12 years ago that I still apply today in social media and creating videos. It's new forms, but the challenge and the sort of design opportunity there is the same. It's like, how do I communicate this in the easiest, fastest way? In Singapore, I was working with all sort of Southeast Asian markets, all different levels of sophistication. You can talk about, up and coming markets like Indonesia, which is like completely different culture than Thailand, a completely different culture than China. So like really trying to understand how different audiences function and how you, like, sometimes a Western brand trying to come to Asia or an Asian brand trying to get to Western world. So I was
Mm.
kind of in this connection point of things, right? Being in Asia
Mm-hmm.
in that period. And then left design, was disappointed with agency world. I was doing too much things just for the sake of money. My last project was a vaping branding. And
You're like,
then
that's it. That
that's
is
it.
the
Like I'm
bottom.
happily leaving this because I just felt like the industry was just getting a bit too, like, not so positive, Moved to education. I spent 4 years of education, and then once I left education, because the same thing, digital AI is changing so fast. Being a teacher is not the same today as it was 5 years ago. Um, that I moved back to um, design and branding with the Web3 environment. I think, to me, by like, I don't know, my friends were like, I have a specific, you always have this friend who's like suddenly like got like, invested on Ethereum when it was like $200, and now it's like 4K. And then you go online and everyone is saying like, it's too early. And you're like, yes, yes, yes. And then it's still early. Then it's not so early anyways, but yes. Then
Yeah, now eat that 2K.
here
But
we
then
go.
back
We're
up to
still
4 and then
waiting.
back down.
I'm still waiting for this 4K to become 8K. Still waiting for
Yeah,
that.
it's coming soon.
But yeah. But I think, I mean, that process of getting to Web3 as a normal sort of like user, not as a
Mhm.
marketeer, helped me learn how the whole sort of ecosystem works, when it comes to marketing, because I was
Mm.
part of the ecosystem as well. I was
Mm.
watching all the podcasts of, uh, degens, and trying to learn how to invest and trying to diversify, but not really,
Yeah.
and doing all the mistakes that everyone.
Diversify, but not really. That's that's the that's the theme of our whole industry. Diversify your portfolio. Everything's down 50.
Diversifying crypto, but not really, because you're already in a very risky space. But to
Yeah.
me, what
Yeah.
was worth at the end of the day was to
Yeah.
get to know the community, get to learn by losing money, get to learn what's a scam, what's not, and also
Mhm.
like understand the mindset of the industry as well, and also to understand the mindset of the brands that are in this industry. And for me, that was really, I mean, the reason why I lost so much money, but also because I believed it so much. When
Mhm.
I think when you look at the narratives, right, that are in crypto, and you look at the way the brands in crypto talk to people, and the way it's sort of focused on community and the idea of decentralization, it really appeals to, I think, our generation, and I think actually
Mhm.
appeals to everyone in general. So, and then the way the industry works, which is a very sort of collaborative environment where you have more collaboration than competition in a way, right? And then people are sort of collaborating and building something bigger. I think that's a story that every single crypto brand kind of represents, and I think to me that's really powerful, and that's why I'm here, and I think
Did,
that's why we're all here as well, right? To have
yeah.
that.
I'm curious. You said that you were, disappointed with the sort of agency work and design, and then you wanted to move away from it. And when you came across Web3 and, got inspired by the community and generally like the bigger goal, the bigger vision? Was it that, when you saw the brands that were currently in Web3, you were like, okay, my help is needed here. I shall stay in this industry to bring the design into this world? Or what was your sort of
I was
path
still,
back to the design?
good question. I was still resistant to go back to designing, to be honest. Like I was still like, half of me was like, um how can I say? I think the bigger idea here is that I am like, as being part of a DAO, which we are part of a DAO, right? Or network, let's call it a network. You feel that you're more sort of like, um you're part of it, like I think once you, and I think that's the story around like Web 2 environments, right? I wanted to have my own business, for an example. I didn't want to work for the same people, and I already work for the biggest one in the market. So for me, it was a bit like almost like I achieved the top of my career, and after here, I rather do something else, entrepreneur, open a shop, I don't know, bakery, anything, right? Because I just didn't feel like I wanted to go through the same wheel again.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think when I look at Web3, and I think it was a slow process. I don't think it was like, oh, I really want to do this. It was a bit more. I think there's a lot of trust elements that you need to build when you join any community, or when you support any blockchain, or even when you're a developer. Like which brand are you going to develop for,
Mhm.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you have limited time. Who are you supporting? Who is the people you're supporting? I think that's a bigger question here, and how you build that trust with the people who are actually, you know donating their time to help your project to succeed. I think that's the bigger question here, and that's the biggest challenge I think every single of our clients also face, right? How do I get more developers? How do I get more people to join my community? Like but the question back is more like, what are you doing in return? It's not just marketing, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
not just tokens or NFTs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
It's the
that's.
And
hardest thing.
yeah, I think this is a good segue to, and I like how, thoughtful you are about the whole like process of like what is there specifically about this company, about this project that, we could build around, like in terms of the marketing strategy, in terms of visual, like branding, design, language. So I think this is a good segue into a question of, how does the branding process look like? I think, everyone has their own sort of rails on how they move. But when, a client comes to Myosin sort of like, and, you join the project, what are you thinking first off?
um Being very technical about it. Like, of course, we have purpose and vision and where you want to go, and like, the stories that you want to build, because at the end of the day, it's all about storytelling. Branding is all about storytelling. But like
Mm-hmm.
being very sort of technical about it, and I like to be technical because I come from a school of design, which is like, it's Unilever, it's Nestle, like it's numbers, right? But being very
Yeah.
number centric about things, it's all about building, in terms of design, it's all about building distinction, right? And there's I think there's this research, that I always use in my career, which is called, um, the name of it is distinctive, visual assets, or distinctive brand assets. So when you think about McDonald's, you think about, I don't know, Ronald McDonald's, or the M.
Mm-hmm.
It's distinctive, right? It's not something other burger shops can use, and if they use, it will promote McDonald's. It won't promote you. So like,
Mm-hmm.
when you build a brand, you need two things. You need to have distinctive brand assets that you invest on them over time, and they become over time something that is connected to you. That's one
Mm-hmm.
thing. And the other thing is, you need to own categories. So what I mean by owning categories, like category entry points, it's like moments, micro moments, that people will remember of your brand, right? So like you need to have in one side and you have strong identity, right? Things that people will remember you by who you are. And the other side is you need to have strong moments that people connect you with those moments. So let's think about crypto, or
Hmm.
maybe let's think about um, I need to build an app. That's a moment, right? When you think about I need to build an app, what's the first brand that comes to your mind?
Like
Mm,
a crypto app,
It could
Phantom.
be. No, I'm just being a bit more open here.
if I need to build an app, well, I would think about vibe coding nowadays. So I would think about Windsurf, Cursor, B0,
Mm.
one of those. Yeah.
And you're coming from like a person who builds apps, for example, right?
Hmm.
Like a developer. So a
Yeah.
developer might, or like a marketeer might think of those brands, right? But if I'm more specific, I need to build a mobile app.
Yeah.
App
Then
Store.
you
I just think Apple, even though I'm,
Yeah.
Apple,
yeah.
right? Apple,
Mm.
Hmm.
Apple. When I want to build a mobile app, this is the category that Apple or maybe Google fight
Yeah.
for, you know. And if
Hmm.
you want to get into this category, good luck, because it's a moment that is owned by that brand already, you know. So
Hmm.
it's like you have a ownable moment. So like when you think about Web3 in general, you need to think about moments that we want to control. And then there's a lot of saturation
Mm,
already out there. So I want to find a community that I can code together. So many brands are doing that. Probably brands
Hmm.
like Ethereum that came first are
yeah.
having like control that moment, right? Or I wanna, and then you start seeing almost like the category of crypto, right? As a
Hmm.
whole, you see brands like Bitcoin. What's the
Yeah.
job to be done? What's the category entry point for Bitcoin is I want to save money, or I want money that sounds like money, or I want something that is safe and secure and it doesn't change and it's unhackable. That's there. They control this category,
Hmm.
and it will be very hard for any other brand to take over that, because it's a category, like it's like
Yeah.
it's a thing that it's very hard to battle against, because it's sort of like globally recognized as well. Then you have, okay, other category, entry point. I wanna code. I want this, but I want to also build apps on top of it.
Hmm.
Then you have a second layer of brands, all the different L choose for Bitcoin, trying to fight for this second sort of moment, you know. So it's
Yeah.
like that's kind of how it works. And if you are a brand at today, your opportunity is more around what are the moments and the situations that no one is playing with,
Hmm.
right? Where is the sort of like blue ocean, right?
Yeah.
Where are these spaces where I can build a good storytelling and differentiate
Yeah.
from the ones that are already out there through distinctive visual assets, right? Visual elements that are unique.
Which is certainly not an easy thing to do. Well, it's
Mm.
hard, right? Because like in crypto, it's such a funny thing of, I mean, people talk about all the time, right? Of just how many chains there are, and everyone kind of positioning themselves in similar ways because potentially there are only so many different types of things we can do. Um, but I'd be curious. I mean, Ram, you've been doing, working with us on different chains and different types of branding projects. Like, what does that process normally look like for you? For someone who, because I think the other thing too is, when you talk to people who aren't marketers, and even people who are marketers, frankly, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding around brand design. I think most people just think it's like, hey, I need a new brand. And really what they mean is I need a new logo and I need some
Mhm.
fancy colors to like, look
Yeah.
sexy,
And make it pop.
So you
right?
need to is
Yeah,
like you need to first sort of like analyze your space, look
yeah,
at who are the other players who are competing for attention with you. It's
yeah,
the best
Yeah.
easiest way. Otherwise, and you start from there, right? Like looking,
But
okay,
yeah.
yes, Paulina.
No, but I'm sure you heard this before, especially in Web3 space, when devs are super passionate about what they're building, and then they come to you and you're like, but there's no one like us. Like, we're so much better than these guys. We have no one has tech like us.
All the
And
time.
then you're like, okay.
And I think that's the biggest sort of like flop in the branding world for Web3, is because there's so much of this like we're the best, we're unique, you know, scalable, fast,
Hmm.
decentralized, community driven, you know.
Mm,
I think this is, and that's when I think it's the best to look at the sort of like observe where we are. So I think, and my, I think
Hmm.
that's kind of our first meeting, right? Like with the client is like, okay, this is your category. You are in this space. Let's look at everyone else who's doing this. Let's learn from everyone else, because at the end of the day, do it better is sort of like the way we innovate nowadays, right? Who is doing the best? What can we learn from those guys? And then how can we create something that from a design side is different than those guys? I think that's right,
Yeah.
distinctive, how you create
mhm,
distinctiveness, how you stop using the purple everyone is using, how like it's kind of like when you're the first one you get an advantage, like the Solana purple, right?
Hmm.
The Solana purple was new-ish because when they when sort of they came with that sort of like, you know, style,
Hmm.
compared to, let's say, the Ethereums and the sort of like challenger brands that were in the market. They really differentiate themselves, right? You look at the top 10 cryptos in the market, that was the only one purple. Everything was blue, orange. So right, like, and then everyone comes and copy, but if you come first you get an advantage, right? So it's a bit
Hmm.
like that. You kind of need to understand, okay, where what's where we are, how can you differentiate yourselves, and then how can you build a story which is based on some level of truth of like where you, how you want to communicate with people, what's your final objective and how can you get there. um I am a very sort of like, different people have different processes, there's different brand
Hmm.
ways to build a brand, there's different, you know, I like to do it in a very instinctive way, which is not
Yeah.
necessarily I follow a process specifically, but I kind of
mm,
try and error and multiple mockups, like multiple possibilities, almost like playing God a little bit. Like,
Hmm.
okay, imagine if you go more premium and sleek and more like this, or
Yeah.
imagine if you go more playful like this, and then with the team, and I think that's kind of the importance of co-creating with the team, we
Yeah.
can decide and define, okay, does this feel right for us? When we go to this direction, where are, it's like playing God, like where do you want to go, right?
mhm.
And which directions do we feel it's right, align with our strategy, our product, what we want to tell people, what sort of, you know, what's our pipeline for innovation in the next few years. All those things are part of that sort of brand, which at the end of the day is how you, it's your personality, right? Like it's the clothes you use, right? Is how you, what's your voice, how you show in front of people. um so yeah, it's a mix of all of this. I don't know if that
Yeah.
answered your question.
No, I think I think it did totally, and I think it's really good like exercise also for the team to co-create this brand with, because you visually on a like a whiteboard or something, you position them in this industry, kind of painting that landscape for them, and then giving them actual like visual representation of what their brand can could be,
Hmm.
depending on what you saw is missing in the space, and then they can also contribute, because you know as everything, if you're creating a marketing strategy or a branding in a silo, you can pour your heart and soul into it, but if the team doesn't resonate or doesn't like it, that's
But you need to
waste.
be technical as well. Like, meaning, I
Mm,
cannot come to McDonald's and say, let's go, let's be blue now because blue is differentiating. And like, everyone is tired of red. You cannot, like, there is value to everyone's brand. Like, of course, some clients come to us and they're like in different stages, right?
mm,
So if you have a client that is in a startup stage, right? Let's say still defining their product, or still maybe already found a product market fit and is in that point that they need to sort of like scale and grow. They just, they might have nothing built, right? They just have the product and maybe a name.
Mm-hmm.
It's the best word because you can do anything because you're kind of building the brand from scratch. And that's when you kind of, okay, how can you create something that helps you to build your trust and get to where you want to get? But there's cases of brands who actually already have value, right? They already are in the market for many years. They already have a color palette, a font. So then our job is like almost like distill and find out of all you have, what is this unique to you and what do you want to keep? And then we keep that part, and then that part we sort of build on top of it. It's you need to be technical because there is cases of brands um, that do a massive rebrand and then they
Mm-hmm.
lose market share. People, the community doesn't understand what they've done. um,
Yeah.
it breaks, right? So it's not, there's different cases, different scenarios demands different approaches.
Yeah.
Rom,
So
oh, sorry.
no, go for it.
M-
But yeah.
would love to see, Rom, is it possible to kind of, I think what would really help drive this home for people is the kind of the flow of like a
Mhm.
past client potentially. If I know we need to be careful about, not giving away any, a client's like brand or anything, but something
Mhm.
that we've already done in the past. So I think people can visualize because I think that'll really help, I think, drive home the process, maybe, if that's possible. What do we think?
I'm thinking, who can I share?
Yeah.
Um, I
There's a lot
think,
of things in the works, so we have to be careful here. So if
Yeah.
if it's not possible, then that's okay too. Yeah. Keep in mind this will be public to the whole world.
And right now, because we're live.
We are live.
No pressure.
Mm, I don't know actually. Um,
Okay. Yeah, maybe we need to be careful there because of sensitivity.
yes, maybe book a meeting with us and we can share with you. But like,
Yeah.
um, yes, but I think that's a good idea, right? Like I think once we have a final client published out there, we could do a series. I'm really working on a new project right now. I'm very excited about. It's called QF Network. You'll see it soon. And
Yeah.
What is it about?
20 developers creating the next blockchain. They're gonna change everything. And it's just the best, scalable, fastest. You know, that same
Oh.
sort of brief. But then the idea here is like, how can you create a brand that is really unique than any other blockchain out there? And that's
Mm.
what we're trying
Mm-hmm.
to do. Um,
What would you say out of all of them that you can recall now, and with good branding that kind of makes them memorable? Which one has the best branding?
which one has the best branding? It's like it's the best and the worst at the same time. It's
Mm.
Bitcoin for me. It's
Why?
like it's the best and the worst because it's so decentralized that you have, it's like anything orange. And if you go to, let's say, a Bitcoin conference, you see like the visually the ugliest thing ever done with the Bitcoin logo, almost like no rules apply.
Uh
But
huh.
if you see that B and you see orange, you suddenly recognize it. So it's
Mm.
almost like the community really owns it and then can create so many things, from the most pretty things to the ugliest things out there. The community can create things on top of it. There's no owner, meaning completely sort of like open to anyone, right, to create it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then, but that allows almost like a sort of like ownership to the brand that you don't see in a Circle or in a Solana,
Hmm.
right? Where
Mm-hmm.
then it's the other way around. Which I love as well, right? Like you go Solana, for example. I think everyone uses them as example because in the middle of what I can see is like when all the crypto brands launched, Ethereum started with that sort of trend, Bitcoin as well, of like, okay, Ethereum is at the end of the day, we're talking about finance, fintech. right? It's finance.
Mhm.
And you go to their website, it looks like you're going to a Star Trek um, next
Yeah,
movie sort of
Mm.
anime style, you know, and that's for a brand person like me that used to work with the Citibanks and the, you know, the big banks. I look at it, I'm like, wow, this is really like talking to someone else that is
yeah.
not in the mainstream media or anything, right?
It's the
Yeah.
devs. It's devs talking to other devs. But if you're trying to be a chain for finance and you want to sell to the Mastercards and the hedge funds, you have to appeal to them, right?
And
And I
that's
think
when
that's something.
the
Yeah.
Solana does it well, right? They speak to a traditional Web2 investor or like, you know. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a bit
While
like
also speaking to the degen retail masses. I think that's the
I
really
think
nice thing
so.
about their like it's sleek, it's sexy, it kind of gives you that like
Apple
sexy
vibe.
fintech startup vibe. So it's a very unique blend because I think it's something, you know, we've talked about as well, Ron, with the specific client I have in mind, where you're trying to balance that fine line between how do you speak to institutional and tradfi, traditional finance, while not alienating the community. Because I think that is the unique thing about Web3 is you can co-build this with the people who are your biggest fans, but your customers and your supporters may not all be, you know, it's a
Yeah.
whole thing. It's a whole ecosystem you're trying to cultivate.
Yeah.
Like I I'm even opening their website right now because maybe that could be a good segue to like observe and
Yeah.
talk about things, right? Like you see, like it's sleek and futuristic, almost like an Apple thing. But then if you're a
Hmm.
developer, then maybe here grants, right? Different design. But then if you go to their hackathons, I don't know if it's here, but like if you
Wait, I
look for
can't
like
see anything. Did you open a new window?
I did. Oh, it's doing the same thing. Okay, cool. So when you look at like things like their hackathons, then
Hmm.
it's a different identity altogether, right? You see,
Mm.
Yeah.
It's like a
right?
different brand for a different event.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
this one, the bear. This one was cool because they did it in the middle of the bear market, and the whole
Mm.
concept was around the bears.
Very
And
clever.
yeah, like very clever. You don't have the full campaign here, but the idea is that like you adapt the brand as so, like the more adaptable the brand is, the better it is because you can sort of like talk to different customers. But then you need to keep something, and that's when
Yeah.
the distinctive brand assets come. It's like the ingredients. Um, I like to say like building a brand is a bit like building. A, it's like cooking. You
Hmm.
have
Mm-hmm.
multiple ingredients. Like you have flour, you have chocolate, you have sugar. Some ingredients is like ingredients that everyone uses, but some ingredients are unique to that recipe. And that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of our job is like how I create ingredients that are unique to you. But then at the end of the day, it's not just about the ingredients, it's about the chef, the meal you're creating, how many people are eating, how are you cooking this. So our work as a branding or a marketing agency is to create ingredients, but the client also needs to have chefs and people inside the business who can cook those ingredients properly. Because
Yeah.
the biggest mistake is to put too much chocolate in a chocolate cake or, you know, exaggerating the amount of sugar that you put some here and there. So all those things, that's why you have guidelines and guidance. So, you know, people can follow the recipe and cook
So
Yeah.
something
is
special.
so Rom, I wanna. Oh, sorry, Polina. Do you want to go ahead? Uh,
No, just on the cooking bit, and I think it's really great, like comparison because, such as with cooking, they're not one thing that's like completely new. It's all comes from inspiration from something else, but it's about how you put it together, what kind of story you layer on top, like what kind of memories go into that recipe that reminds you of this flavor and things like that. So I'm really aligned with that
it's a
analogy.
constant remix. Everything is that
Mm,
is creativity is just taking two things that already exist and mashing them together and creating something new, right? That's the beauty of it. Um, Rom, I wanted to ask you a question as let's keep taking this cake, cooking analogy
Mhm.
forward a little bit. I guess for those who may be listening, people who are building in this space, right? I think there's a lot of discussion on crypto Twitter right now about the role of marketing. Who's the first marketer you hire? How do you get about it? And it's interesting because I think people very much only think about marketing in terms of growth or strategy, community, content. It feels very rare that brand or design is really inserted into that conversation, even though I very much classify brand as a key element within the whole marketing stack.
Yeah.
But I guess it's kind of like a two-part question, which is number one, when and how should people think about marketing, especially if you're early? And then number two, if you don't have a lot of resource, which
Mhm.
oftentimes happens, right? You can't hire someone like Myosin or different branding agency or whoever else to come in. How should a founder think about these things? How early? What's the MVP for someone to really get going? I guess. Yeah.
When you're founder, your priority is creating your product and finding product market fit and like getting
Hmm.
something that it's not building trademarking or brand in every single market. That comes after. So I think it's really about building our product first and getting it there. But I think one pitfall some founders get is like, doesn't mean that branding should not be a priority at the beginning. You need to be careful because you also don't need a massive guideline of 50 pages because you're not there yet. But you need
Mm-hmm.
to just kind of avoid the idea that sort of like scammy look. There's some brands out, some big, some
Scammy look.
yeah, it looks like a scam. Like some brands out there. You look at their logo, you look at their landing page, it
Yeah.
just feels like
Can I
it
ask
has
you a bit of a spicy question? What do you think about the Berry Chain branding
bear chain.
Oh.
I it's like it's brilliant. It's bad at the same time. I don't know how to explain it, but that's
Yeah.
my perception, right? Like it's brilliant
Mm,
because again, like it's a chain that is distinctive, distinctive
It
brand
stands
attribute.
out. Yeah.
It's distinct. It has a story. It's a bear, and in the bear market, you also have the bears, and it's a chain as well. Like it's
And
powerful.
people always cite on their website, you can't scroll down because it's up only. So you can only scroll up.
yeah.
So
Genius.
they are more towards like if you create a sort of like a line, put the Solanas, the big this serious guys in one corner, and you put the bear chains in the other corner, you have everyone in between, right? So I think
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like in that space. I think there's limitations to growth to a brand like bear chain. At some point you need to grow in order to grow, right? There
Yeah.
is limitation. So I think they can start like that right now, and that's fine. But I think in some moment, it's like the same happened with any Web2 brands like the Robin Hoods of the world. You look at Robin
Hmm.
Hood when they launched, fun, young, Gen Z, and like when you look at their latest rebrand, it's like Coinbase, you know,
Yeah.
same thing. So I think it's like that, like being very technical about things. Barachain, brilliant, unique, never seen anything like that. Hit them. That's why we're talking about
Yeah.
them right now and not talking about 200 other projects we are trying to copy them or doing something similar. So that's
When you
my
said scammy, it was just my association. The first time I came around the
uh,
Berry Chain, it was like the
mhm.
sort of infographic with all the
Yeah.
little logos of the chains, and I saw it and I was like, "Is this a joke? These are actual logos."
But
That's why I asked.
yeah, yeah, like it is like it could be seen as a scammy brand depending on like the kind of audience you're trying to target,
Mm,
right? But I think there's hundreds of projects out there. Like we work with some clients that arrive and then you look like you question yourself like how did you build a business that big with this website or with this brand? Like
Yeah.
anything is possible.
yeah.
Like so I think founders need to be just do you don't need to spend $100,000 on your brand, but you need to have clarity on your positioning, what you do,
Yeah.
what's your product about, and you need to have a brand that creates some credibility. I think
Yeah.
those are like two things you need to have. Like credible brand, it could be as simple as go for minimalism if you don't know what to
Yeah.
do, like put, it doesn't need to be anything ultra.
Yeah.
Not.
Use a template. Yeah, use a template out there. There's hundreds of templates. Try as much as possible to make it, clear what you do and
Hmm.
credible, build credibility.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
as
And
you
then
expand, then you can, bring new elements. It's rather to have less than to have unnecessary stuff
mm,
that would just make your life difficult as you start expanding. Yeah.
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And then I just want to add to that, right? Because I think it's like as we're going through this, I'm like, what makes for like what defines credibility? And that's the hard thing about brand, right? It's such an ephemeral concept. There's no secret formula. There's no one playbook, but it's very much it's about culture. It's about, and I think maybe, and I guess we didn't really dive too deep into this, right? But like, what does that process look like? But you kind of talked about it earlier, which is when you want to think about how you position your brand, you have to look at the marketplace, right? And so, what is everyone else doing, and how do you stand out, right? And so, if you can do that, that's maybe one thing that founders should do that many don't even bother doing, right? Because I've definitely, Ram, you and we've talked to a bunch of people, and they're like, "Who are your competitors?" Like, we don't have any competitors. Like, we're the,
Mm.
we're the best, we're the fastest, we're the most scalable. It's like, okay, but like that's your opinion. Like, go talk to a retail user. Like, what the
Mhm.
fuck? They don't care about, right? Um, and I think the other thing with branding is, I don't. I think Rum, you'll be familiar, but I don't know everyone else if they will be. But it's the whole like Simon Sinek has this framework of like why, how, and what, right? Which is a brand that is truly authentic has all three of those things work together, right? What is your why? Why do you exist? Why are you unique? Why, like, what is your purpose for being and being different? How are you accomplishing those things? And then what are you doing to bring that to life? And I think in crypto, and by the very nature of the fact that this is such a developer driven industry, there's a lot of coders who just focus on like the what and the how, which is, fast TPS, very decentralized, but very few people are thinking about the why, which is like to what end? We're building all this infrastructure, we're building all these blockchains, but why do you give a fuck? Why? What is the thing that you're leveraging it for? And when those things don't align, that to me at least is when things feel inauthentic, when they feel off, and you're like, this doesn't make sense. Why is this? Be I don't know. It'd be like if Bear Chain, I guess, got suddenly too institutional. You're like, wait, I thought this was a chain focused on, the more degen retail side. Certainly, they're trying to attract more institutional, I'm sure, but it's a more gradual transition rather than a sudden.
Mm.
They want to be J.P. Morgan, tomorrow. That feels weird, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I'm just trying. I'm thinking a lot, I guess, trying to like
Yeah.
pinpoint
I think
what
it's
is
about
that.
being accessible as
Yeah.
well.
Hmm.
Like like if you're not accessible, then let's say if you speak overly technical jargons and talking about technical specifications in your communication, then that's not for everyone. That's like for a specific group of people. It's too much
Yeah.
focus on what we're doing
Hmm.
rather than the reason, right? The benefits of your technology or the benefits of your product. Like what how this is going to bring some transformation in people's lives or transformation in your business, or I think that's the important conversation
Yeah.
to have. Yeah.
And we touched base before on, the purple that you said that it's everywhere, and I
Mhm.
think the non-accessibility one as well. What are, the things in branding and design in Web3 that you think need to die?
um there's not really like a wrong color, right color. We have a limit of the number of the colors of the word, right?
It
If
doesn't
I'm
have to be a
against,
color, you know?
I think it goes back to the I think there's something that is non-brand related and it's important, which is your product experience,
Mm.
right? I think how you onboard people, how you say hi, what's your first email, which way you are sort of interacting with people, right? And then that's actually as important. Like your colors, your logo, your brand is just a way to help you do that work better. So
Mm-hmm.
if you just if the discussions are just around the colors, it just become a very basic conversation. I think we need to sort of like be aware that, you know, it's actually at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because if you're not doing your onboarding properly, if you're not welcoming your community, if you're not having a great transparency in the way you lead, you talk about your business and your products and your updates and all those things, then there is no point to have a purple or pink or, you know, red. Doesn't matter, right? And then at the end
Yeah.
of the day, you can make it work with any color palette, right? You can make it work with anything. I think it's less about those things and more about overall sort of impact that you create, right? What's the impact you want to create when people interact with you for the first time? I think that's the point here. And I think when you create something with impact, and that's what we try to do with our rebrand projects, is like, how can I create an impact for your customers that people will remember, right? Because memory
Mm-hmm.
is flawed. People forget about things really fast, right? So how do we build
Especially in this space, attention spans of goldfish.
and
Yeah.
there is good things actually. You look at the amount of startups and amount of projects, all of them are have incredible, you know, ideas and objectives and teams around it. So it's a lot of good things. I think the hardest part here is like, how do we, you know, help the good ones to
Mhm.
thrive through building that sort of impact.
Yeah. I think it gets underestimated a lot of the times because always is limited to like colors, font, your logo, and then take a template or something and throw it together and throw some copy, and that's it, it's done. But they underestimate how much actually the foundational groundwork is done to get that branding out there, to get that message out there.
Yeah.
It's not just words on paper, it's everything. It's the experience, like you
And
said.
we're used to it, right? Like I like to tell a lot of our projects when we work with them, the client always 80% of the time when you show the first brand for the first time, you're always like, wow, like that, like wow. Like,
It's the
yeah,
fun,
like,
most fun part.
yes, because if you compare the before and after, it's like plastic surgery on steroids. You know, you suddenly look young,
Yeah,
fresh. Actually, our biggest challenge most of the times is like not to do too much, because you look younger, you look better, you look like more agile, you look more interesting, more sexy, all of this. But are you really? And that's kind of
hmm
where we kind of, you know, discuss with the founders, like, okay, we can definitely make you look like Apple, but are you Apple,
Can
right?
you
Like,
live up to the promise, or are you
can
just
you,
putting lipstick on a
Yeah.
pig? Yeah,
yeah, like, I never worked with Apple before because Apple doesn't need, honestly, like they already have good branding. The ones that come to us are the Huawei's of the world, right? Not the
yeah,
Apples of the world.
it's true.
And yeah, like it's true. Then when you work for Huawei and Huawei is like, do like Apple, we're like, yes, I can make you look
Yeah,
exactly like Apple. And they do look exactly like Apple if you look at their products and look at their,
yeah,
but the question is your culture like the same?
yeah,
Is, you know, like, is
Yeah.
the way you deal with your customers, the way you build your products, design, all those things, is the culture change. Branding is not just design, it's culture as well. And I think that's what is so powerful about the work that we do when we collaborate with, you know, founders to build brands. Is like what kind of look you want to have, but also what kind of culture you want to create with your community, what personality, how you want to behave. Because at the end of the day, is that will dictate everything,
hmm
right? It will
Mm-hmm.
dictate your future, even though you're not the best or the biggest or the most youngest or powerful. I don't know for now, but the moment you start behaving like that, you will set a standard for everyone in your business, in your community, to kind of live like that, right? Or to be like that.
yeah.
That's the point there.
I love it, Rom.
That's good.
We do need to. I'm just flagging. We do need to probably wrap up soon, but I think maybe one or two more questions and then probably rapid fire rounds if Polina you want to take that on. But I guess
Yeah.
on my end, I think there's kind of like two questions that are kind of tied together, which is I think around as someone who's deep in it, right? You're doing design and brand work for a lot of different chains and projects right now. Do you have any hot takes on where you see, the Web3 design trends headed towards in the next year? Like, are there any things you're seeing that are interesting to you that you think, maybe it's the role of AI art in all this? I don't know.
Mhm.
UGC. And then also, like, what's the thing that pisses you off that you think just needs to die, that you're done with? You're like, no more, please. Um, yeah.
I think we're kind of following the um, narrative, right? In a
Hmm.
way, since we are in this industry, and
Mm.
nowadays it's all about like institutional relationships, right? So
Hmm.
I've seen a lot of the need of being less Web3 a little bit and
Hmm.
less
Mhm.
sort of like meme like and like, Barra chain like, being more less of this and a bit more serious a little bit to talk to, to talk to investors and to have more of a back to, a bit of back to the fintech world and I think that's a bit of the trend right now. It's like
Hmm.
I think people are there's a niche, and I think we need to stop talking to that niche. The institutions, big sort of banks, they are already learning how to talk the Web3 language, and I think Web3, if you wanna really, continue growing, those big players are already learning how to speak our language. I think is also the opportunity for us to also grow up a little bit and speak their language as well, which means again building that trust and building that
Yeah.
element of connection with a broader audience than just sort of this meme like degen audience, which is what we are used to. I think that's the trend.
Crypto's growing up, hopefully. Is that what I'm hearing? Maybe.
Let's see.
Woo.
Um, yeah, and I think with AI, I'm very excited because I think conversational sort of tone of voice and like a different experience is being created with brands. It's not just anymore color palettes and logos. I think it's also like tone of voice and how you communicate with people um, through
Mm.
your other channels. So the whole experience is also changing. But I think that's the trend. It's like institutional, bit more. I'm not saying serious because you're still Web3, right? Still community driven, but it's
Yeah.
more like how do we, you know, um, consolidate the industry a little bit and
Mhm.
sort of like re- bring what we have, which is good, the community aspect, the idea that we are building this in a decentralized way, but also have some standards of um, the way we build our image, right? The way we
Yeah.
create our presentations, the way that we um, dress ourselves. All those things need to have some sort of element of consolidation there. I think that's where
Yeah.
we are right now.
Coming soon.
All right.
Coming soon. Very insightful, Rob.
Yeah.
I love it.
And quick round of rapid fire, if we have a minute. So what is your like, I mean, top three or number one red flag when start working with a new brand, if you have
Biggest
one?
red flag, I think,
Hmm.
is just talking about token price and
Mm.
technology all the time. I think like this is I understand the value of that for some brands, right? And I understand this is an important thing, but I think that's sort of like you're missing the point if that's your conversation because you're just talking up to 1% of your community, right? Or maybe
Hmm.
90% of your community could be. But I really think that when investors want to invest on your token, at least when I want, I mean, when I was losing money with crypto, I was looking at not just token prices and all those things. I mean, there's the whole meme coin economy, and that's a whole new word. I mean, it's even difficult for me to understand that word. But
Yeah,
in
it's
general,
casino world.
Proper casino. Proper
yeah,
casino.
if your brand is a casino, then yes. But generally, just talking about token price and technology and upgrades and all those things, it doesn't really get you anywhere. I think investors want a team or a community that has a purpose behind it and is building something, like that. It's old school building, growing,
Mm-hmm.
collaborating. I think talking to your community, not ignoring your community or not really building a community, not
Yeah.
ignoring your the people who are voicing over, complaining, answering to you on your social media. Those this sort of like 1% of people, 10% of people that is in your community that is really like engaged with you. I think
Mm-hmm.
ignoring them is a big red flag as well, because they are the ones co-creating this with you, right? And we are in a world where you won't have employees anymore. You're actually going to have people who actually want to be part of it. And I think just token prices is not something they want to see from you or from the community. They want to see uh, movement. And I think that's where
Mm-hmm.
branding helps, because when you do a rebrand, you actually showing movement. You're showing, oh, we're evolving. And I think
Yeah.
it's part of it, right? It's part of the
Mm-hmm.
same story of engaging your community and, not talking about tokens and prices of tokens
Yeah.
constantly. Yeah.
That's a good one. And the last one,
Hmm.
in the last year working in Web3 design, being a Myosin and working on your projects, what is your biggest learning?
My biggest learning, it's that it's my biggest learning. It's actually that you don't need to, like, I think to fail early,
Hmm.
it's I mean, I know it sounds basic, but in the branding world, there's this idea that, oh, to show something to the client, it needs to be perfect. You need to come with like, a recommendation, a final
Mm,
recommendation of something that is like pretty and nice and it has applications and look at how nice it is, sort of like focus on winning awards kind of branding.
Mm-hmm.
And I think um I rather open my laptop and open my design file, my Figma file, and share one day of work rather than waiting for 2 weeks to refine it, and then I miss the brief or something is off. So I
Mm-hmm.
would say my recommendation is really like, it's okay. It's a branding project, it's like any other project. It means it's okay to showcase something work in progress, and a draft of a logo or a
yeah.
draft of an identity. It's okay, because at the end of the day you will get to better result if you do that earlier than if you refine, and when you share, um, the client or the community wasn't part of the building it. You
Yeah.
guys were part of building it. The client or the brand or the community wasn't part of building it. So it's much more harder to get it approved. It's much more harder for them to feel that they contributed to the process. So
Yeah.
I think my biggest learning is really like, do as you go and share as you go.
Yeah.
And hopefully some clients understand that. Some
Mm-hmm.
clients don't understand that. But at the end of the day, it's always better to fail earlier than later.
I
Yeah.
love that one.
Yeah.
And
Thank
I
you.
think that's a learning that applies to not just design, right? Like I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
whether, like
Mm-hmm.
pulling it with like community, if you're putting in a community strategy, like sharing the development, right? It's a brilliant, like everyone wants to be collaborative, right? Like
Mhm.
every client wants to feel like they have a say. So whether it's community, content design, anything you're putting together with a client, I think it's generally to make them feel like they're a part of it. It's actually like a brilliant like kind of judo move, right?
IKEA
Like
effect.
And
yeah,
sometimes,
There's a name for it.
yeah.
but you
There
do
you go.
that, and then if the clients are like, why did you present something that is not even finalized
You're like
yet?
you did it.
And you're
Yeah.
like, and you're like, oh my god, like, because that's how the process works, like,
Yeah.
trust the process, and the final result would be amazing, but the process is a bit drafty. as
Yeah.
we go, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
Awesome. Thanks for, joining and for chatting branding with
Thank
us.
you.
It was very
Yeah.
insightful.
Rom, this was really helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I hope anyone listening really got some great insights. And then, Rom, actually, the last thing we always ask guests to do is where can they find you? What's the call to action? What should they do when they're listening and they need branding help? Um, yeah, you tell us.
Just, get in touch with Blake.
Yeah,
I am I mean romolocastillo.com is my portfolio,
yeah,
which now just redirects me to um my Behance, so you can see some of my old work there. And of course Myosin.xyz. That's the latest job, the latest. I've been kind of 100% focused on Myosin the past 2 years. And yeah, and then not only me, but like I know a bunch of other people as well, all the way from designers, animators, 3D people that work with 3D. If you need any sort of help, advice, or anything, just get in touch. We always
yeah.
find a way to help as
You
we
can
can.
find us on myosin_xyz on Twitter. If you're listening to this right now, you should be able to find us pretty easy. But
Yeah.
just submit interest on our website on myosin_xyz. Ping me in DMs or Polina or Rom or any of our members here. Um, just know sometimes I feel like the X filter doesn't do the best job because every now and then I go through my spam messages and I find some like real ones. I'm like, uh-oh, I have to like follow up.
Yeah.
But yeah, just add us maybe in comments. That might be easier. But yeah.
Or like
All right.
Romulo at myosin.xyz, right? Like just
Yes.
email. That's the easiest
Yeah.
way actually.
Email Rom. There we go. But yeah, so thank you so much, Rom. This is really great. Very insightful. Excited to share this with the world. And yeah, have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon. See you online.
Bye bye.
Thanks so
See you
much.
then.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao. And we're
Boom.
on.